Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome all of you this morning. Specifically, I'll say looking at our sponsor for this particular webinar series, Business Engineering. We thank you, Philip and the team. But beyond that, from the Municipal Edge and the Future Cities Africa, we welcome all of you. And again, then as we get to the 5th year of our local government conversations, it has not been an easy one, but we've managed to come this far as we celebrate our 5th year, having run the government conversations. Your tenacity, your support, your vision with the teams, both at the Municipal Edge and Future Cities Africa, we greatly appreciate. And again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zolani and the surname is Zonyane. I'm the moderator and the curator of these webinars, which again, as I've indicated, it's been a journey of 5 years up to this year. You've been with us, supporting us, and mainly contributing to the conversations themselves, and we are grateful for such contributions. As you all know, in terms of our conversations, the chat box is always open, specifically for your insights, not only questions, your comments and contributions in ensuring that we drive successful conversations that look at solutions in ensuring that we really do change the trajectory of our local government. Having said all that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got also our supporters, but at the moment, I just want to flag the Chartered Institute of Government Finance, Audit and Risk Officers. And the reason for that, you have made a call as the audience in the past couple of years that it will be great for you to earn CPD points for these webinars. Our partnership with SIGFARO have delivered on that starting this year. For each of our webinars, you earn 2 CPD points, which you can claim if you need a certificate from SIGFARO itself through dropping an email to cpd@sigfaro.co.za, and I will be acknowledging other partners during the course of the conversation itself. In the panel, to really look at the topic of today, mainly focusing on whether municipalities are embedding ESG principles in their procurement processes. We've got Mr. Sakhumzi Mayekiso, who is the local government procurement specialist. We are also joined in the panel by Thandi Pino, who is CEO, also a procurement specialist from Dakar Consulting, who are also joined by Philip De Bruin, Managing Director of Business Engineering. Once more, Philip, your platinum sponsorship to ensure that we keep going, to ensure that our audience manage to access and participate and contribute in these webinars without really paying. We always say, yes, these webinars are free, but behind the scenes, someone is saying, we appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, introduce yourself from the chat box. Just let us know where you are coming from, and we will be taking your questions, your comments as we proceed with the webinar itself. Let me welcome you, Mr. Mayekiso, as you really lay the basis or the baseline and the environment of the ESG embedment within the procurement processes within our country. But the question that you will each be answering as a start is whether are we there yet? Welcome, and over to you, Mr. Mayekiso.
Good morning. Let me see if I can switch the video quickly on. Hope the background light won't be that bad. Okay, I can try and move. Yeah, I hope you can see me. Good morning, everyone. The name is Sakhumzi Mayekiso. Mr. Zonyani introduced me, so do quite a lot of work. In fact, I'm in the procurement field to start with, goods and services, and also my infrastructure. So work with I've done work with domestic government, local, provincial, and also now work with international governments quite a lot across South Africa and also in the SADC region. So yes, I've prepared just a three-slide, Mrs. Onyani. If I'm trying to flag this, I'm trying to flag the slides, and then yeah, and then so that we can start. So you'll tell me if you can see it, and then I will then proceed from there on. You will then just confirm with me once it appears on your
Yes,
end.
it is
Yeah.
up. If you can just, yes, there we go. You can
Okay.
continue, sir.
All right, thank you so much. All right, yeah, okay, now that I've got that part out of the way. So yes, again, as I said, my name is Sakhumzi Mayekiso. So we do quite a lot of, procurement assistance across the municipalities in the country, and also outside of the Republic as well, looking mainly in the goods and services, but also the new concept now, looking at environmental related issues in the infrastructure and the resilience thereof. So in answering your question, as you've laid out the ground, in terms of our, just answering the question in terms of the ESG, transparency, accountability, environmental, social, and in the, and governance, social and governance in the municipal procurement. So what I've done, I've just did an outlayer of, the experiences in projects just from my end, also sharing with the colleagues so that we can start the conversation. And then also the current, climate or the landscape, from our own analysis that was done, where are we and how far are we and what do we need to do? So it will be more of an engagement point, the second one. So, but yeah. Just as a start off point, I thought it was important that I just extract three, points that I just want to share with everyone so that we can start, the conversation. One was an extract which we used last year when we did some analysis. That extract came from SADC in respect of they were doing a grading of where are we as a country in respect of the infrastructure. So yeah, and then they gave us a grading D, so it's like at school, so you get a D, so which is pretty not where you want to be. So you're just below average in terms of the pass rate. So that is what they've given us, and as a country in terms of the engineering side, where are we as a country in respect of the infrastructure, and also how good is infrastructure, is also will it be able to handle any stresses that would come either from environmental or any other stresses that would come. So we're not in a pretty good shape, but depending obviously where you are in the country, whether you're in the west or the north or the east or south, also the situation around you. Then the second one, this was a political economy analysis. This was done by international partners that work with South Africa in respect of procurement governance in the country. So what they did an analysis countrywide, one from a desktop, and also they've engaged with quite a few municipalities, I think in 3 or 4 provinces, just to look at the situation analysis. Where are we? And also, what are the dynamic challenges that we face as a country? So, key points out of this one, it was the highlighting of the complex and overburdening of a policy framework. Then the weak procurement practices, and I think this is part also of the governance arrangement. And then also they look at the infrastructure and also the insufficient funding to meet the demands to get us from the D points that was graded by SADC to a point where our infrastructure and also the procurement, the governance within the procurement, the infrastructure responds to any environmental and also social impacts that can withstand that. So they gave those views. So these are completely independent people from outside of the country. So they have no relationship whatsoever with anyone in the country, but they just gave us an objective review. And then lastly, with the EAP, that's the PEA, the economical analysis, political economic analysis. So then these partners with the country, when they come in, they then started to shift the focus into the overall objective when they do funding into the country, for either governance arrangements or infrastructure. Then these were the key factors that we're focusing on. One, the increased cost efficiency or cost effectiveness of one, the procurement and also the whole infrastructure regime, and then the socially inclusive, which then responds to what you've asked earlier on the social inclusivity of our procurement and also the downstream processes post the procurement in the implementation, also how the infrastructure responds to that as well. Then the other one was the sustainability of the service delivery, both at provincial and also at local government level. So they've now the focus is on these key areas, but the main driving point, it's the infrastructure and the infrastructure readiness to respond to any dynamic challenges that would be facing as a country, whether it's in the east, whether in the east where the KZN flooding. Just now in the Eastern Cape, last year June, we had something that we never had before, where we had flooding in June. Usually in June, it's not a rainy season, but we had flooding in Butterworth and Mthatha. So the infrastructure there, environmentally, it was, how it responded. And now we just had other floods in Limpopo. So we've also saw what the response was in terms of infrastructure. So those are the kind of things that, then the people started asking the questions, how are we preparing ourselves? But with that being said, there are a couple of pointers that I just wanted to share, with the journey that we undertook, I think this was 2015, when, the conversation started around the resilience, and also environmentally, conducive, infrastructure that we would, undertake. So there was a project that we once did, and again, that it was a conscious decision that was taken by the powers that be, looking at the climatic, and also in the environment. If we were to look at the construction of social housing or any other infrastructure, and also including the green requirements, so then what would be the requirements, and also what would be the building blocks in getting that one to move off the ground? So then there was conversation that, we need to get the Green Building Council of South Africa as a collaboration, looking at the social housing. So as a starting off point, so that we can start to understand what is the climate like, number one, and also how would the response be like, number two, from the environment and also from the supplier and also from the supply community and also from the people themselves that will be recipients. So how would it,
Is it me or we lost him?
We seem to be lost our lead presenter, and hopefully he will be joining us. Mr. Mayekiso, are you back? We lost you for a bit.
Okay. Yeah, the network is a little bit off here in Bloemfontein, so it's a little bit, jumpy, the network. I'm not, can you hear me now?
Yes, you are back now. You can continue.
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry about that, man. So, as I was saying, that was the first concept project that that we involved in, and that looked at the environmental and also the social element. So the environment, also the social element. But then the starting off point was the social housing. How can we use the green building requirements in social housing? So, but the point that we were driving home on that one was to look at how would, use the efficient, the materials using resource efficient materials in water, building materials, also the energy consumption to read in the reduction of the environmental impact. So that was the objective with that one, trying to understand what can we do with number one, and is it achievable, number two. So that was the one point. And then the second one, also under those environmental and also requirement, project that we did, was to look at what is the, in a specific area, looking at the construct of, of housing. Again, we use the housing as a social housing as a springboard in this one, because it was easy to understand and also easy to measure the health the health impact on it. So what we looked at was from the design, the construction, and also of the social housing. But what we've also looked at in that area, it was the issue of the Southern Cape condensation problem area. So just to look at also how we do, the orientation of the housing and all of those kind of stuff. And then but what preceded all of that was the issue about the social, about the health bill. So how can we reduce it? Just not by doing anything that is, costly and expensive, but just looking at the whole design aspect of the social housing and see whether there will be any reduction in that. So, and in embedding all of those, we needed to look at all these environmental, impact, and then also look at the materials that would be used in order to achieve all of these principles and goals and objectives. So that was those were some of the projects way back then, to start think about how do we embed the, the environment and also the social principles in the design philosophy and also in the implementation of these things. But in so doing, there were challenges that we faced. One was the institutional readiness, from our part, like the people, systems, and the processes to execute those, all of these. So not only from an SEM procurement side, but also from the planning, and also how does the planning then influence the procurement, but also further to that, the contracting, and also how does everything else evolve from there on in terms of the and on the ground level, the people, how do they measure, and also how acceptable will it be. So it was those challenges that we looked at, and also the materials availability. At that point, would we have the materials that were required under that Green Building Council, to be able to fulfill this? And then also the market readiness. Was the market even ready to accept and also to respond to these needs which we put? And also the maintenance and the life cycle. How do you keep these structures all of in place? So those were the kind of discussions that we had right at the beginning in order to understand how this would evolve. When we look at the environmental side of putting into procurement, but also looking into not only procurement, but the whole life cycle and the whole value chain within the institution, from planning up until contracting and everything else within. And also the downstream processes within the communities. So those were the first, things that we looked at. But in terms of the current processes, based on the work which we do with the partners from overseas, not just only here in South Africa, but across, the SADC. Look, I think for now, the resilient plans, for social infrastructure and also others, it's still we still have a way to go. And I'm speaking just purely from a procurement element. Now, there's all the work that is being done with FIFDIM and also the IDMS by National Treasury and all the guys. So they're also trying to address those aspects, but looking just purely procurement from the procurement side, there hasn't been that many that have come through. But with the bigger cities, your eThekwini, Cape Town, and Joburg, there's a lot of work that has been done, and they are doing in response to some of the challenges that they have. But as the rest of the other, institutions, it's still a long way to go. And just not only institution-wide, but just from a community, and also as a community, South Africa is a community in terms of understanding, how to transition into this. So that is the issue, that the dynamic that we faced. Then in terms of the social inclusive aspect that of this, I've been privileged enough to work to do some work with to partner with IBP, International Budgeting Principles, and also to Law Institute. So they looked at the procurement data transparency, for communities to hold institutions and suppliers accountable for services. Now, and also they've also tested the website. We've also in the program where we've sampled many municipalities across the country's website to see if there's any procurement data that would be there that would be usable for the public to hold, the institutions accountable and also the suppliers, accountable. But the challenge is that there's still a lot of challenges insofar as that is concerned with the data. Although South Africa through the National Treasury has now, I think last year or the year before last, we've joined the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, but that is still at a very high, at a high level where it's the National Treasury does the reporting for international partners and also players and actors. But insofar as locally, they still have a long way just from a website, a population with the data and also information that would be usable to reach that objective of socially inclusive so that people can hold other people accountable. So we still have a bit of a long way to go. Some have gone the furthest and others are still far back, just from the website design perspective. And there's been a lot of work that has been done over the years, but we still have quite a few to go on that one. And then the governance principles, in my view, and as which then comes from the back end of that political economic analysis, not just from what we've assessed as the people within with our own institutions. So the challenges in terms of the governance are still there. It's evidence. It's in the AG report. It's everywhere. So it's a reflection of the institutional challenges and also arrangements that are there in terms of people, the processes, the systems that you still need to be sharpened, and also with all the and with all the frameworks that have been introduced, and also with all the policies and with many other things that have been introduced. So, in my belief, this is now my personal view. Having engaged and also done a lot of work with local government institutions, the amount of regulatory requirements that are there. It is so much so that it consumes you, and if you don't have a strategy in terms of how you work your way around it, you quickly find out that you've missed quite a lot of things, and then which obviously result in all of these governance governance gaps. So that has been the one thing that has been highlighted, and then the repeated and obvious patterns when behaviors influencing the governance failure. So just not only the governance failures, but the patterns and the behaviors that are just sitting slightly above the operational governance, requirements. So that also those silent factors that also play a huge part in the execution of the day-to-day operations, which affect the governance arrangement, the governance architecture of the institution. That also has an effect, and it has been highlighted quite strongly by the political economy analysis as well. And then I think also with that background of the political economic analysis, what also stressed out them, which is evident in many institutions, if you don't have integrated business processes, right, indicating where everything starts from your line to the mid fund, which is procurement, again to the line for contracting and project management, and then and the close off and all that cycle loop. So if you don't have those things in place with the SOPs accompanying each event in the process, in the business process, and with the checklist as an execution point of that SOP, then you can easily find yourself, swamped, with all of the regulations and with all of the acts that come through just in the procurement alone, let alone the other added requirements from the other disciplines as well. So if those are not there, which have been highlighted as they are missing in many of the institutions, then you find yourself quickly being swamped by the many things that are coming through your way, and you'll be easily swayed from left to right as a result of the lack of these business processes. So that has been, I think, the strongest point that came through that, and from a governance perspective. The defining of the business processes. Then once you've defined the process, how it works from point A to point B, from cradle to the grave, and all the events in between, then you create a process how that will be achieved, the what, the how, and when, by who. So you draft in that way, and then you have a checklist of the execution of those. So then it will easily found yourself, being swayed left and right. So that has been coming through quite evidently with the analysis, and also from our own engagements with with our partner municipalities on the ground as well. Then you would see those things that are missing. But with the bigger ones, they've got the budget, the capacity, then they've got all of those in place. But still, you can see that, the governance architecture is not properly structured. If it was, then we'd not be seeing, all of these irregular, whether from a technicality or from an operations, So, but still, there's just a challenge that we need to strengthen insofar as the business processes are concerned. So, I won't go through this. This is just a strategy that, but I think the other colleagues will talk more about this one and also the software, the systems. So, those were just my thinking points when you gave us the challenge that this is what it is. What has been the journey, and also what experiences, and also how far are we still at the beginning part, or are we in the intermediate part where we've done things and then we're now in the middle, or are we in advanced stage? We're not in advanced stage, we're not in the middle part, we're still in the conceptualization stage and trying to come up with responses to the current challenges, climate, social, and also the governance. That's why we've got so many policies that are coming through. But in terms of the designs from the lines and also the things that have been there, structures and infrastructure have already been there, but things are remodeling now that we need to start consider how do we do that. And in so doing, the whole preparation of the institution, from the planning to the designing, to the procurement, to the contracting, and also to the people that be doing the approval and the reviews. So that still needs to take place so that everyone understands where we're heading to. So right now, we are not at that stage. Strictly speaking, from procurement, we still have a gap to close in that one is concerned. So that is in response to your question that you posed earlier on. So I did this 3-slide presentation as a prompting thought, and also to engage on this matter. But that. So back to you, Put.
Thanks a lot for such contributions, Mr. Mayekiso, in trying to lay the current environment within our system, specifically looking at the subject. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we had a bit of a later start. Our apologies, but we will ensure that we make the 2 hours. As you might have also picked up during the presentation, that indeed technology infrastructure investment, specifically in some of our municipalities, needs attention. Your contribution, it's touching on 2 fundamental issues. One, inward looking within municipalities, as we talk green procurement, smart procurement, procuring infrastructure to mitigate climate change. One aspect when you come back will be more the outward looking, specifically on the supplier environment, to check whether the suppliers of goods and services to municipalities compliant with ensuring that the goods and services that they provide, those suppliers do comply with environmental requirements, your social, that will touch on one example, labor-related issues and governance. Because this embedding of ESG principles, it should start at that level, so that it also assists municipalities in decision making, to ensure that as municipalities, we first answer the question, is my supplier or are my suppliers compliant on their end to ensure that as I deliver the services as the municipality, I also do comply. Thanks for that. And as we will be welcoming Thandi, just also to acknowledge our partners, as I've indicated, in South African Local Government Association, the Center for Municipal Asset Management, the Institute for Local Government Management, and we've got the Institute for Municipal Personnel Practitioners of Southern Africa, who also was part and parcel of our first webinar, this being our second webinar for this year. We see all of you in the audience, our veterans who have been with us in this series. We always appreciate your contributions. The Q&A option is still open. As we get to yourself, Thandi, and again, I'm posing the same question and also based on your experience, both previously and currently. In this topic of embedding ESG principles in municipal procurement, are we there yet? Welcome and over to you.
Oh, good morning, Zolani, and good morning, colleagues. I guess when you ask that question as to are we there yet?
Sorry, Thandi, just as you start, if we can, I'm not sure your bandwidth, if we can see.
Sorry. Yes. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, Zonani. You asked if are we there yet? My answer is better late than never. We are very late and we are very behind. I don't know if the colleagues are aware of the ISO standard, the ISO 2400. It's the ISO standard that talks to sustainable procurement. And it's not your typical quality standard that you have to comply with and all of that, but it's basically a guideline on how we implement or embed sustainable procurement in our processes. Sakhumzi talked earlier about material, talked earlier about the construction practices and everything, but we are at the beginning. You know, those materials, for them to be there, they would have been gotten by supply chain. Those suppliers to be there, they would have been appointed by supply chain. So now the question is, do we have the capacity, the competence, and the understanding to get those kind of suppliers? So this ISO standard talks about how we embed these processes. They talk about like currently, when you look at our processes, we evaluate suppliers looking at the economic or the financial aspect of ESG, but we've never talked to social, we've never talked to governance. Okay, governance is there, but when you talk about social in terms of sustainability, are our specification sustainable? Are our evaluation criteria or processes sustainable? Are our contract management processes sustainable? Because it starts there. And then also, it's about policy. We need to have a sustainable procurement policy. We need to have our staff being trained to understand what sustainable procurement is, including our user department. And then we have to talk to the supplier market. You know that these things also cost money. At some point, South Africa introduced preferential procurement, whereby government appreciated that it costs money to employ our suppliers, where we moved from appointing the cheapest supplier to the highest point scorer. So when we want to embed sustainable procurement, government will have to start thinking also about what incentive or what mechanism can they also bring in to actually support suppliers to become sustainable. Countries like Tanzania have advanced. I mean, it's interesting that we're having this conversation. Last month, actually, I was looking at a big document from Tanzania. They were buying vehicles and their specification was actually sustainable. So now, before you even go to market, it's all good to have our sustainable specifications. But if you go to market and nobody complies, then it still becomes a futile exercise. So it's one of those exercises that we need to actually be intentional about. There's a saying that nothing ends wrong, everything starts wrong for it to end wrong. So where we are, when Sakhumzi was explaining, we are at the end, but we need to go back to the start and start this thing correctly. Let management start having conversations about sustainable procurement. Let management start having conversation about how does a sustainable procurement policy look like? How does sustainable specifications look like? For example, I love that this conversation is at local government level because municipalities has landfill sites. You know, previously when we talk about procurement, we'll talk about buying laptops. And I always ask now to say, where are the boxes for those laptops going? You know, all you're worried about is just the laptop. I get the laptop and that's it. But now when you talk about sustainable specifications, we need to have a conversation about that box. When you talk about sustainability, we need to have a conversation about when the lifespan of this laptop ends, what's happening to it? Where are we taking it? Are we going to throw it to a landfill site? Does the landfill site have the capacity to actually receive and process this asset? And now when you start talking more about it, you also realize that disposal actually will come at a cost. I learned last year that demolition of buildings is a CIDB graded work. So you don't just wake up and demolish a building. There's laws that governs demolishing a building, and that is disposal, that is decommissioning. So now when we go back to our specification committee, when you talk about total cost of ownership, we now have to talk about the decommissioning, the disposal. How much is it going to cost? Where are we going to take it? As a municipality now, we need to start also talking about us as the municipality for the entire ecosystem in government, that Department of Health, when you dispose those medical whatever, how are you going to expect to dispose it? Human settlement when you build those houses. So local government, I think we are the best people to start having this conversation and providing guidance, because when it comes to the environmental element of it, our landfill sites are there, and we are not actually as vocal. So the answer to your question is no, we are not there yet. Thank you.
And what I like about your contribution, beyond just sustainable public procurement, you are bringing in the circular economy aspect, because the moment you start to ask about what do we do about that material, that then begins to be the one that brought the laptop in. That brings the total subject all together. And as I'm sitting here, we really do need to have more of these in 2027, just focusing on these particular aspects. And thanks for that contribution. We will be getting to some of the questions that came from the audience during the registrations. But as I get to you, Philip, there are just few comments that also came through, and I believe the first two speakers already have touched on some of these. We had one from Mamelo who really indicated that she would like to get more knowledge on this particular webinar with respect to this particular subject. We had another one from Muhammad. Also, I'm interested in the content of the webinar, particularly as it relates to local municipalities incorporating sustainable procurement models into their functions. And again, these first two submissions, I can tell you, they have opened some of our minds in trying to understand the landscape of ESG procurement principles within our space. Philip, it's the same question. Firstly, welcome. Are we there yet, specifically from the side of your exposure to technology and systems? And then again, it's a conversation that will take further as we engage with the questions and comments from our audience. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Zolani, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I mean, just trying to speak to the two questions that was raised. I think one of the things that I'm picking up is that the concept of ESG must be seen within the confines of the MFMA, which actually governs the procurement in local government. And it's supposed to provide sustainability, ethics, and social impact. Really, in a nutshell, that is what the ESG stands for. And we've had some very interesting comments, especially from our two previous speakers. I'll touch on some of them in a minute. I'd like to jump to just maybe the middle part of the ESG, and that's the social component, where I think we've sort of there or thereabouts with regards to the economic inclusion, community upliftment, and reducing inequality, which are sort of the three core components if we look at the social impact. And that's really been governed through the promoting of BE compliance, supporting local SMEs and SMMEs, fair labor practices, local labor, and there's been a big focus on job creation and skills development. with regards to municipal procurement in the municipal environments. We have to actually be mindful because a big portion of what we procure in local government, if we look at the consumables, comes from China. So we're defeating some of the local social objectives that we have planned. We don't really manufacture many things in South Africa that 80% of the procurement or the volume of procurement that happens in local government speaks to or satisfies. So I think if we're there with social, I think we're fairly okay. With regards to the environment, I agree with Thandi and your comments on the circular economy. Something that that hasn't been proven yet is energy efficient equipment. So there's a focus in some environments where battery operated vehicles, for instance, battery operated weed cutters, brush cutters, those types of things, that poses their own challenges because they need to be charged, etc. But if you look at a green scorecard, that would contribute to effective or promotion of a local green economy in our towns and villages. However, what's not clear is the disposal process, which I think is critical. What are we going to do with those batteries when they reach the end of their life? We're digging a hole and we're putting them in the hole. So those are the types of things that I think it's easy to look at. And Sakhumzi's presentation this morning with the Green Building Council, and yeah, that's all great. That's fine. Compliance in that regard is probably a bit more flexible than it is sort of under daily run-of-the-mill aspects. My opinion, if we want to make an impact with regards to energy efficient equipment, low carbon footprint suppliers, we need to have a scorecard similar to what we have for the triple BEE component. It's very detailed. It tells you exactly what you need to do, and at science points to specific objectives. If we do that, then we'll be able to force suppliers in general, not force, but we'll encourage suppliers in general to comply to some form of green framework, because I think the ISO standard that was quoted by Thandi is an excellent example. It is just very difficult for us to enforce that in a short period of time. So it's probably need to take a 10-year view or a longer term view of having that incorporated. But you have to start somewhere. And one of the suggestions that I would like to make to the forum is start with a scorecard, start with a basic scorecard. If you're procuring X, then see what the environmental impact is, do a proper assessment. And then even if you just allocate 4 points, at least we've done something. With regards to governance, Zolani, it deals with so many things: anti-corruption, supply due diligence, conflict of interest. Those are the typical types of things that comes through the normal run-of-the-mill processes, and supposed to strengthen institutional integrity and deal with the basic sort of management of procurement agreements. But it's not flawed, but it's not waterproof. So again, in that space, I think we've got a lot of work to do with regards to governance. If you put a stop street in the middle of the road, people will find a way to circumnavigate that stop street. So it's just something that we have to be mindful. And with even with proper systems, and there's a lot of work that has been done by National Treasury with the reforms, the financial reforms. It started with the MSCOA implementation, trying to just standardize the financial environment, but also bring about very definite changes in the way that we report with regards to governance. Yet we still have failures in that system. So in a nutshell, I think we're there, but we have a long way to go. I think if we want to give ourselves a grade, as Sakhumzi said in the beginning, we could probably get a B for social and E's for the other two. But there is definitely room for improvement. I think it's important that we speak to these three principles in a holistic manner, and that we have a commitment from all stakeholders and all parties. And again, just to end it off, it's local government procurement is where the tire hits the tar. This is where it happens. If it starts happening at this local level, then we'll see the impact in our local environments, our local communities. Thank you.
That's mouthful. No, as you are concluding, I'm just making a note to say that should be the rubber that hits the tar.
Thank you.
No, thanks for that, Philip. And you are mentioning one of the fundamental important issues as we talk about, I'll say, systems and technology, touching on M-Score as a reform, which is, again, that will be an enabler in terms of the conversation that we're having. And as I'm touching on that, ladies and gentlemen, join us this coming Friday as we look at M-Score in supporting data-driven governance. We've got you, Philip, again there in that conversation, and we look forward to more of your insights. I want to get back to you, Sakhumzi, specifically on the point that I raised immediately after your submission, that looking at the conversation itself and the majority of the input is more inward looking in municipalities. Let's look at the suppliers in terms of your experience as to whether within their own planning processes, within their own manufacturing and development processes, to what extent are they embedding these principles based on your experience? And I'm asking that mainly from the point of view, in some of the events, sessions, webinars that I get to attend talking about the subject, it's always about reporting on ESG. It doesn't really get to the point of the very first phase of planning, ensuring that there is compliance. And linking to that question, we had a question from Gift, who really wants to know whether we are on track on ESG agenda, but based on the three panelists, I believe that part of your question, Gift, has been answered. But the next part, Sakhumzi, links to this question that I'm raising again, because Gift is asking that question because, according to him, it seems as if some entities don't know their role in embedding ESG in terms of their delivery. What's your take on that?
Okay, thanks, Budzezet. Man, you see, it's a twofold answer that I'm gonna give you. One, you've mentioned the inward looking, how we still need to move, and I think both Mr. Brain and also Ms. Tandem, they've covered that point extensively, that we still have a long way to go. Let me take the part outward looking in respect of the suppliers, number one, readiness, and also looking at the value chain. We manufacture these things or we import them from overseas, and then we have them in the country. That is the one part. Now, I don't think the one, in terms of recycling, or as you said, the circular economy, what do we do with those things once this life cycle has been reached? We are, as a country, as a community, I think we still also have a long way to go. And I'll give you a classical example, either with computers, at least with light bulbs. Now we've moved, leaps and bounds, but with other materials, the new materials more in particular. So we still have a lot of, thinking how to recycle them, and also what to do. And I'll give you one example. Now we are in this revolution with the green technology, whether it is paneling, the solar panels, or the wind turbines, or the small ones, whatever it is, the batteries and the whatnot. So we still find out, the issues of dumping, whether it's in the municipal landfill sites. So we don't have a strategy yet how to take them out back to, or how to recycle them. And I think this is not just only us here in South Africa, it's a global issue. So with all this new speed development in some of these developments, the thinking of how to then recycle or how to reuse them or repurpose them once the life cycle has been achieved for one specific objective and then repurposing them for another, that is something that we as a global community still need to look out for. So we still have a way to go, even here in South Africa, far way to go, in South Africa insofar as that is concerned. So again, Ms. Otandi made an example of the boxes. What do we do with the boxes? When you buy a laptop, so we just throw them away. So there is no either buyback process from the manufacturer that you send it back to them and then at this incentive. So we're starting to see some, recycling, buyback community, that is being done and, repurposed, but only on specific items, but not on the entire, material cycle that is being produced. So waste-wise, we still have a ton of waste that, goes and that still need to be processed. So we still have those issues. Then also moving in terms of, the conversion of the waste to energy and all of those, we're still quite far from, from all those technologies. We're still reliant on international, technology. So we haven't developed our own, or we haven't established industries within of the borders of South Africa or SADC that we can start looking in terms of all of those technologies and also how to recycle. So that is a challenge that we still sit with, not only inward but as a community, as a whole community, because it's not only the private, but it's also the public, because the public is the consumption of those materials, then the private is the seller of those. So then how do we then close that loop? Either from a policy, from a strategy, from, as a country strategy, how do we do it? So we don't have one yet, a joint strategy. So everyone does it as in the business opportunity arises, then you quickly develop a plan, but there isn't a long-term vision, a long-term plan, how we can do all of this, and then also how we can achieve the sustainable goal development, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. So that is where we are stuck as a country. So insofar your question is concerned, we still have, as a country, as a community, a long way to go in developing SDG goals and also actioning them. That's the other thing, we can develop all of these wonderful policies, but we have a culture problem in South Africa with the actioning of all of these wonderful policies. That is where the issue lies, I think, with us. We still need to break through the culture issue of institutionalizing our policies, then we can at least move forward. So that is I know it's a long response, but I think it was, for me, just judging, analyzing and assessing the entire, environment, the climate, both public and private, where we are, we still have a long way to go from a policy, from strategy, and also from as a community, as the peoples, in terms of how to deal and also understanding what those and how to deal with those waste and also those products that have been developed. So that is my submission to you, Mr. Zonyane. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for that. And as you are making your contribution and input, it also brings in another dimension, which could not only be a dimension, but a medium to long-term challenge that we could still be facing, because in our procurement system and processes, we've got the suppliers, which we call suppliers, but sometimes the suppliers are not the manufacturers, and that puts in another dimension, specifically on what we really want to achieve, looking at these conversations. And again, it will be best maybe as we look at 2027 to see how best do we then create that environment that will not only look at the supplier level, but take it deep to the plant where these goods and services are manufactured. Thanks a lot for that. Thandi, I know as part of your work currently, you are doing some work beyond the borders of South Africa. And again, as we were having a discussion on how best to deal with this topic of embedding ESG principles in procurement, I do know that you are involved in actually developing and implementing a strategy. Maybe share with us your experience specifically within that particular process, and I believe it will also deal with some of the questions that we are faced with, not only as a country, but as a continent as well, on this ESG agenda. Over to you, Thandi.
Well, Zolani, like with our normal SCM units, there's this procurement maturity assessment that we usually do in our supply chain units to check how matured they are, whereby the highest level of maturity, it's where you have systems that are in place, people, in terms of capacity and skill, you have processes and all of that. And the same applies with sustainable procurement. Countries like your Ghana as well as Tanzania are matured. They have the country, actually, not even individual organs of state. The country, the public procurement of the country has matured in that. And where you start with that sustainability maturity assessment, where you start and say, you build this framework to say, this is where we aspire to be, or this is where we're supposed to be when we are deemed to be sustainably compliant pertaining to our procurement process. And then once you have that, then you start building processes or systems or action plans to get to that particular space. As I've indicated about this ISO 2400, it's a very nice document that gives guide in terms of the starting point. But more than anything, it requires that as an organization, you must start inwards first. You must start looking at your processes and your policies. And it's a pity, I mean, our legislative environment comes from Section 217 of the Constitution. And in the Section 217, there's no talk about sustainability. There's only talk about the financial element of our processes, which is cost effectiveness. So, but that does not stop us from actually having this conversation and broadening our mindset. Because if you look at the Procurement Act does talk about sustainable procurement, whereby now it recognizes that such has to happen. So when that happens, and unfortunately, with us, we were spoiled by National Treasury, whereby everything that we have to do, we rely on National Treasury to give us a guidance. We rely on National Treasury to put acts in place and all of that. So I'm hoping that National Treasury could start now thinking of model policies that can put in place to give guidance to municipalities and government departments as a whole in terms of where to start, because it starts with governance, it starts with policy, it starts with strategy. Once you have that in place, then you know where then next to go, because it's unfair to some extent to expect our suppliers to comply with what we also don't understand. Like as I indicated, that if you don't have a sustainable evaluation criteria, you are still going to get those suppliers who don't comply with your sustainable targets. But at the same time, those suppliers, for them to comply with such requirements, you need to work to train them and capacitate them and put some incentives. What other countries do is that, without having to invest as government in terms of these companies, you put incentives as government to encourage them to comply with the sustainable goals. So once you put those intensive incentives, they will see a benefit for them, because this whole thing is not only about government, it's about the entire ecosystem. Even the very same suppliers are going to benefit when we become sustainable in terms of our procurement processes. So now these countries, what they do is that they've put incentive in place whereby suppliers can actually be motivated to comply. But also, and I like to make an example about the MFMA, the way when it was rolled out by National Treasury in 2024-2025, whereby they rolled it out such that they staggered it, whereby some municipalities, they were given some leeway where they were only required to comply with certain things at a particular point. I remember when I was working with Western Area, at the time, they were not audited on their asset register because they were given time to put systems and capacity in place to be able to comply. Then AG can come and audit their asset register. So these African countries, that's what they also did, whereby when they start introducing sustainable procurement, they put it over a period, and then they start put in timelines to say, at this particular time, this is where you're supposed to be. At this particular time, this is where you're supposed to be. So that you then gradually improve and build towards that and get to that space where you are matured. But in the SADC countries, unfortunately, we're not there yet. Like I said, Tanzania is one of those because I've seen their sustainable specifications. Even Tanzania and Ghana, they're actually quite advanced in terms of this. Thank you.
That's much appreciated. And again, going through the questions, I see our Q&A function is a bit slow today because even the question that is in there is more a comment. We've got, yes, but the inputs that you've just made, and again, they go back to addressing the quick questions that have come through, because one of those came from all the way from Nigeria. We welcome you, Prof, and thanks for always with us, Prof. Idris, because the question there was, how do we leverage ESG in local municipal procurement for a sustainable development in African cities? And what Tandy has just alluded to, it also begins to touch on, number one, the challenge that we have on this topic is not only unique to only South Africa, but again, it's something that as a continent, we really do need to look at. Philip, let me come to you, because on the issue of the systems technology, you really touched on the fact that we've got the systems, we've got the tools, and I can attest we've got the data, specifically in looking at this particular topic that we are talking about. But from experience, as I've indicated, we've got the inward-looking view, which again, given M-score, I am confident that for municipalities that are looking on the components of ESG in terms of their service delivery, in terms of tracking that currently, because we can talk about this future that we are talking about today, but what municipalities are doing currently, as I've said, capabilities might be there, but is it something that we are seeing specifically from their reports in terms of the work that they are currently doing? Over to you, Philip.
Thanks, Zolani. I'm not quite sure with regards to reporting if the ESG is sufficiently constructed in official reporting forums. Well, obviously on the social component, there's definite compliance reporting that we have to do. But on the other softer issues, I'm not sure that that provisions are adequate for municipalities to actually report on progress in that regard. The systems are there. We've got great systems. There are some fantastic systems that manage procurement, and they are ready to incorporate the ESG principles and components. But a system, maybe want to use the analogy. You know, if you've got a clean audit from your municipality, you have a brilliant CFO. If you have an adverse finding, you have a bad system. So it's a handful of the other and a fistful of the other. So yeah, but the systems are there. I think the compliance reporting is perhaps lacking on certain of the aspects.
No, it is good to hear that. And as we take the conversation further, for those municipalities that have joined, those municipalities that will be also accessing this recording, one of the questions should be at our planning phase. How do we then begin as we look at our projects, as we plan, allocate resources? How do we become transparent at that level? Because reporting is at the tail end. Yeah. If that phase, we haven't gone to that level in terms of thinking, in terms of ensuring that
the data that becomes available will also assist the reporting phases in terms of these particular aspects. No, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Back to you, Sakhumzi. And again, I just want to get to the people element now, because we might have great policies, as you have alluded to, similar as Thandi has alluded to. In terms of our capacity development strategies, capacity development plans, that goes beyond, for an example, the institutions like your National Treasury that might be involved in those processes, your institutions like the South African Local Government Association in terms of the development, capacity development initiatives. We also need to take it beyond that to academic institutions. And again, this will be the question that will be going specifically to yourself and Thandi to say, as we look at the curriculum from that aspect of building future professionals, do we see these topics, these focus areas coming through? And beyond that, how best can we do as we plan for developing capacity of the staff, ensure that we embed these developments in those capacity development initiatives? What's your insight on that, Mr. Mayekiso?
Thanks for that. You're making a valid point. When you bring in the tertiary institutions or higher learning institutions, doesn't matter which one it is you want to look at. Because I'm a firm believer that if you get it right there, even in the lower ones, if this become a societal thing, that how do you now start to engrave that even if just recycling, what do you do with it? How do you I've seen here in Dujwa, in a small town here in the Eastern Cape. I'm gonna get back to the statement that I want to make. I just want to make this quick example. In Dujwa, it's a small town between Butterworth and Mthatha, roughly 187,000 population of the people. Now they started introducing the 3-bin system where you're recycling this and that and that and that. And you introduce it, and at the same time you don't take the people through how and what and where to throw what and what not, and those are rural communities, so people are not used to such. So now one, people throw anything anywhere because one, they don't know why the color green, why the color yellow, why the color is there. They see a bin, a dustbin, they throw in there. And then some just throw next to the dustbin because they don't know why, so they think maybe you shouldn't throw in there. So the part of the education as a society about these issues is important, So it's not just in SALGA alone, because we can do, SALGAs, the National School of Government, and start, inculcating all of these requirements and how they should be done. But I think at a broad level, as a society, at a university level, even in lower, grades. So just to start to get it to conscientize everyone, how to, if it's recycling or if it's this concept, if it's that concept. So you start getting the whole society to move in a particular direction. So as I think we trying to explain, as always with your suppliers, the incentives and the other things, but looking at the people in the institutions. So there's still a lot of training, capacity development, and things that needs to be done. So that can be done by the institutions themselves. But again, it then becomes incumbent upon you as a person, as an individual, to also capacitate yourself, to learn what are the trends, to understand what are the things, how are the things being done. And more so if you invested into a particular topic, either as a practitioner or as a person within that institution that has an vested interest in that particular topic. So again, it's from a societal, we need a deep training and just to build entrenched capacity development and such. But then at the institutional level, as a quick and now as a getting off the ground quickly. So we need to start putting all those systems in place. Again, as a last point to your question, Putet said, if you look at all of the systems that are being developed now for your life cycle, life cycle costing, life cycle maintenance, and it starts from design, and then it goes as far as your demolishing, or it goes as far as your decommissioning of whatever that is, if it's an infrastructure. But now, at that point of decommissioning, what do you do with those materials that you're decommissioning them? I think that is where we also need to start focusing on. Then we start looking at the sustainability, then we look at all of these other, industries that can come out of those demolished materials, and what cause there's steel, there's cement, there's many other materials that can be repurposed for something else. So I think for me, it should go further than just demolishing at that point, but then what other, processes can be used for, further downstream of that demolishing has happened in terms of repurposing the materials. But I agree with you. Societal education in this, it is key, it is vital, it is important. If you look at Japan, countries like Japan and others, where it's very clean, it's not just they are taught at the high level, but it starts from at the foundation level. Then those things they are built with you, So that for me, I would advocate highly, and for such systems to be in place at the people level. Thanks, Patsy.
No, that's great. And once more to our audience, thanks for being with us. At some point, we were at 100 participants, but the numbers are fluctuating. And I'm raising that because within our audience, we've got a diverse type of audience. And the point that Mr. Mayekiso just made, to say at citizen or community level, there is a great role to play. Taking it beyond, we've got civil society organizations, your non-governmental organizations, and it becomes a question of how collectively do we then contribute to the future that we want. But beyond that, academic institutions, it's a challenge that we continue to put to them beyond this topic, to say it's actually high time to review what we teach those whom we prepare for local government, whether there is relevance, whether they'll be able to deliver as they get to the field to actually do the work itself. As I get to you, Thandi, still on this people component of development, and perhaps it's also great for me to share that our first encounter was with Project Kayedu by the National School of Government. From your perspective, such programs that bring all these skills together in trying to solve for these problems, do we think such program, if it can be taken to even lower levels, because even the one we attended was more for senior management, will that approach begin to make a dent in building these skills and capacity that we are talking about, specifically on this sustainable public procurement space? Over to you, Thandi.
Zolani, when it comes to issue of capacity, it goes back to the Zondo Commission about the professionalization of government profession, local government, public sector, procurement, and all of that. And again, what other countries have done it right is Zambia, Kenya, Tanzania, professionalization of public sector is an act of parliament. In Kenya, for you to work in supply chain, you must be a licensed professional. If you don't have a license, you cannot work in public procurement. And I think that is how they showed the intention to professionalize the industry. So now the way the CAs and the lawyers are being dealt with in this country, whereby the work that you do, it's not about only the organ of state, but it's about you as the professional. So you start taking personal responsibility because you know what is at stake for you. Forget about the organ of state that you are serving. And Zambia, they even govern both private and public sector procurement. So now I'm a consultant right now in public sector. If I'm a consultant in public sector, I need to be licensed by them. And then what they then do is that universities or institutions of higher learning, they provide different courses in public sector procurement. But before they can provide that particular offering or course offering, ZIPS must actually sign it off. ZIPS is Zambia Institute of Procurement and Supply. ZIPS must actually, like with SAQA, ZIPS must approve the course content, the course material, and everything. So when you register for a national diploma in procurement at VUT, when you do that course, you know that when you leave there, you will be absorbed in public sector. So after qualifying, they even have different levels in terms of the professional memberships. So you have your student members. So when you are a student, you already register as a member with ZIPS. So once you're a member, after you qualify as a graduate, when you get into the work, your internships, your all of that. So I think what we need now, it's now a conversation with politicians to get a politician that will actually run with this idea that you cannot not expect government a profession or public sector procurement to be professionalized where there is no act of parliament that makes it a requirement. And in South Africa, how we are because of consequence management, corruption, and everything. If there is no act that says I must do this, I'm not going to do it. We always want to have, that's the culture that was created, that we always want, you have IODSA with the King 4. King 4, it was never made an act because the intention was the spirit of King was for people to choose to be ethical. Ethical conduct must be voluntary, but we are not there yet. So where we are in South Africa, everything must have an act and there must be a consequence for not implementing, then it will happen. So for as long as there is no act of parliament that talks about professionalization, we are not going to go anywhere. So all these countries, even with Kenya now, they don't even have a bid adjudication committee. They are saying bid adjudication committee is a ceremonial committee that has no value add. And I'm like, but how can you say that? But they're like, no. Once the bid evaluation committee is done, it goes to the head of procurement, who is a licensed professional, who's going to give a professional opinion to the accounting officer. And this person knows that if he messes up, he's going to lose his license. And once he loses license, he cannot operate both private and public in terms of procurement. So we need to start getting professionals to internalize their conduct, to make my conduct a personal mission. And then you as the employer, it's secondary. So if I've made my conduct a personal mission to be ethical, to be educated and all of that, then the snowball, the outcome or the benefit, yes, will come to the organ of state. So professionalism has to be legislated. Thank you.
Thanks a million for that. And again, for the benefit of our audience, that we always say we can't have these conversations without municipalities. From our side, we've tried, and it would have been great to hear a perspective from the municipality. Because of the current budget process, we couldn't secure a municipality, but beyond the normal budget process, you might be aware of many other developments. One of them, the issue of electricity pricing, for an example, that is giving municipalities quite a headache. Yes, we note that gap, that the voice of a municipality is very important in these conversations. But again, as we always try, we will do so in future as well. Philip, I'll be coming to you, but just to also acknowledge a few comments and questions that have come through. And again, I believe specifically the one from Rajendra, who actually asked a question on how to integrate principles of ecological science into sustainable management of city infrastructure. And again, I believe as we plan for 2027, we will try to zoom back to infrastructure development, and then we try to align some of these interesting questions that are coming through. And there was one also from Suraya, who actually asked, how can local government tap into innovations and establish public sector sandboxes for accessing or testing innovative products and services without risking SCM regularities? And again, looking at the topic of today, to these two questions, these are the questions that really challenge us at Dan and team to say, as we plan for 2027, let's try our utmost best to ensure that we indeed cater for these particular questions. Still on the issue of the people development, Philip, versus the systems this time, it's to check, because we can have the people at the ground, but if they are not receptive to the systems that we have, the tools that we have, we can have all the policies, all the strategies, all the plans, but where it matters most, if that capacity is not built, we'll still sit with the problem. Based on our current experience broadly, do we have that capacity, those skills at municipal level to ensure that as the system providers, your role will always be there. But at the end of the day, it also could not be fair to expect those who provide the solutions to run 24/7 at the systems of municipalities. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much, Zolani. I think just a sort of a broad answer, we have good people in local government. We have exceptional people that understand municipal procurement very, very well. Do we have enough? I don't think so. So there's a huge opportunity there to develop skills in that specific area. And we need a new approach in addressing the issues with regards to, and specifically ESG, as we've discussed it this morning. Today, we very much focus about sort of buying the cheapest, and we need to buy more responsibly, which will inflate the price. We need to look at transparency, measurable social and environmental impact. Those types of things will disturb the equilibrium a bit, but it doesn't detract from the availability of the skills. I think we've got very good people in our environment. We've got very good practitioners outside of local government, people that have spent years in local government, that are always available to advise to the existing structures. But as I think we've had this morning, Sakhumzi and Tandi has also brought up a very good example with comparing ourselves to what's happening on the rest of the continent, looking at SADC and learning from those environments. We have as many people as any of our SADC partners in local government. We have as many competent people in local government. The problems that we're facing are not endemic. It's not isolated to a specific region in our country or to a specific environment. It's a challenge that we have to embrace. And as a collective, if we have that commitment, I really believe that come 2027, moving on to 2030, we can make a difference. Be that small, but we'll make a difference. Thank you.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. As we plan to edge closer to, I'll say, the wrapping up and our final insights from our panelists, with the questions that came, not necessarily aligned to the topic itself, but it's a good question because it also links specifically to this people element aspect, the professionalization aspect that Tandi and Sakhumzi have mentioned. I want to respond to a question that came from Malaika, who is a supply chain management consultant around SICFARO membership, as to whether it's also open to consultants and SCM practitioners in municipalities. The first part of that, Malaika, is that as I'm moderating this webinar, I am a member in good standing of SICFARO. I am a consultant, as it is normally referred to, but I prefer to call myself an advisor and co-creator within public finance management. Again, that's a direct answer to say, as a consultant, you can be a member of SIGFARO. SCM practitioners in municipalities, again, looking at SIGFARO because government finance, that's where SCM belongs, but taking it beyond that particular aspect of government finance. The issue of audit versus SCM, you will all agree that it's very important. The issue of risk management with regards to SCM, it's very important. So the membership becomes important, and it becomes a question of how do we take the membership beyond just membership. As Thandi has indicated, that you are a member of an institute or a professional body, then you happen to find yourself in wrong acts. What then is the repercussion of that? That's the road that we still need to travel. But in answering your question, yes, that membership is open. And again, you can reach out to SIGFARO for more information for you to be able to join our community. As we edge closer to wrapping up our webinar, and again, we would have hoped for a municipal voice, which in future will be there, definitely as we talk about 2027, and also ensuring that these conversations do deliver the impact that we intend them for be. We will create that particular space. Let me come back to you, Mr. Mayekiso, in trying to round up the discussions that came this morning, the insights, the questions and comments. If you were to be given that opportunity to say the decision makers, the lawmakers will take your proposal in terms of what must we do from today onwards in trying to close this gap. What would be your insight, and as we work towards concluding our webinar this morning? You are still on mute, or perhaps let's take Thandi at the moment. Maybe Mr. Mayekiso will be able to share her insights. More on the same vein, Thandi, as we sum up this conversation, because one of the things, even for our audience, is to say, what is the package or take-home types of actions that we should be doing, we should be implementing as we navigate this space and addressing the challenges that we currently have?
Thank you, Zolani. I think for me is let's start. Let's start. You crawl before you walk. Let's start. We talk a lot, we webinar a lot, we workshop and conference a lot, but we don't start. So there's an ISO 2400. Can the colleagues download ISO 2400? And let's start with having conversation about sustainable procurement and talk about the policy. You know, once you start, then you will know what is it that you need to get to where you want to go. But let's just start. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Mayekiso, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry, when presented. Well, I'm just having some technical difficulties. But anyway, just my, in hindsight, and also as you've requested. Look, I'd like to echo the same sentiments as Sis Thandi indicated. You'll never know where you are until you do something. We can talk a lot of English, big English, small English, doesn't matter, as we always do when we talk a lot of English. But until we get to do, the doing part, that's what matters the most. Then we will determine the how, we'll discover the how, the when, but just get something done, just get something done and something through. then we'll then eventually see how it is. So there's got to be something that is a beacon of light that we can make reference to as a baseline, that we did it there, it worked in that way, it didn't work that way. So this is how we're changing it, or this is how we are, amending it. So yeah, like as I said, we need to move away from the culture where we are known, that we are great when it comes to developing policies and things, but very little action comes out of any of those things, if any. So yeah, let's do, man. Let's just do and see and figure the rest out as we do. But let's just do. Thanks, bud.
Thanks a lot for that. And as I'm about to welcome Philip, in the chat, Tandy, there is a request from our esteemed audience member in terms of the ISO 2400 on non-destructive testing. Please, can you just repeat that ISO? Maybe just the explanation.
No, it's ISO 20400.
Okay, no.
Yes, I understand why this person got it confused. It's 20400. That's 2400. 20400. That's the correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, wonderful. And thanks for that. Philip, as always, you've been with us throughout and these conversations, because without the people, the processes, the systems or technology, really, we can't solve our problems. That's my take. And as we conclude this conversation this morning, just maybe to share your parting shot, and it links to what Sakhumzi and Tandy have said as well, to say, it's easy for us to talk. Let's have actionable steps that will ensure that as we meet again in future, we are then taking stock of what has happened in trying to change the trajectory of our local government. What's your closing insights and comments?
Thank you very much, Zolani. I think, just as first off is, I would just like to thank the other participants, the panelists this morning. I think I've learned a lot, and trying to put things in context. And I agree. I think the environment is ready. I think that the frameworks are in place. What we need is to move forward. And as was said earlier, measurable progress, albeit small, is still progress. But we have to agree to move forward. For us as an organization, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. And it's important for us to participate in these conversations. And also for the work that you guys have been doing. Thank you very much.
That's appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, to the audience, it then puts a challenge to all of us, firstly, specifically those practitioners within municipalities, to say, as we get back to our own environments, that would include even the supporting partners, like your national treasury, we've got provincial treasuries, the departments of cooperative governance and traditional affairs, you name them. How do we begin to package? How do we begin to look at collaborative support in supporting our practitioners, in ensuring that these conversations don't only end at a conversation level, but they end at a practical implementation of all the insights that you were exposed to. And we believe, as we have traveled this road with some of you over the past 4 years, and this being the 5th year, you've always appreciated the comments, the inputs that come through these webinars. And beyond that, it also goes to other partners, because solving our problems, as it has come through, it's not a public sector problem. It's not a private sector problem. It's not only the citizens who must then be solving these problems. I always say it's a group project which requires all of us to get involved, requires all of us to be part of the solution, in changing and reimagining our local government. We've got 2 webinars scheduled for April. Be in the lookout for that communication. But most importantly, it's the upcoming webinar this coming Friday, as I've indicated earlier on. It will be on MSCOA in enabling the decision making within our institutions. We've got quite panelists who will then be taking us through how can we tap into MSCOA in ensuring that the decisions that we take are data-driven. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude once more, Dan and team at Future Cities Africa, we always appreciate your contribution, your dedication, as we ensure that we continue to use this medium, this platform, in contributing to the change in our local government, in ensuring that these conversations are not just conversations, but they result to the impact on the ground. And of course, to our team at Future Cities Africa and the Municipal Edge, we are grateful to our sponsor, Platinum sponsor, Business Engineering, as I've indicated. Philip, we appreciate always your contribution. And of course, our partners, which I will not single out at this point. We are always grateful for the partnerships, for the collaborations that really seek to change the game within local government. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we are ending before the scheduled time, but don't worry in terms of your CPD points. Up to the point when you were in the webinar, you will still receive the accreditation for that time. Don't forget, if you happen to need your certificate, drop an email to sigfaro@cpd@sigfaro.co.za to ensure that you've got the certificates for these webinars. At this point, let me say goodbye and then hope to see you in our upcoming webinar this coming Friday, the date being the 27th of March from 10 to 12. Enjoy what's left of the day and goodbye.